So everyone, today we are going to have a fun interview with Mike Mcleod, who is from GrowNOW, and he is an executive functioning and ADHD expert and coach. And I'm really excited to have him here today because most people with neurodiversities will have some executive functioning challenges. And it became a real big buzzword, I think, during the COVID lockdown. People were suddenly more aware of how their children reacted and interacted. And so the first thing I'd love to have you do, Mike, is share with us the definition of executive functioning challenges.
Of course. Yeah. So executive functioning is really an incredibly misunderstood set of skills. And that's a shame because executive functioning is really the greatest predictor of success that we have for human beings. It's not IQ. It's actually executive functioning that allows you to, get a home, keep a home, make friends, keep friends, get a job, keep a job, and, be able to, live independently and be successful and achieve your long-term goals. That's all executive functioning. And most people think that executive functioning is just time management and organization. So that's the top two things that people think of is the ability to set alarms for yourself, use a calendar, and clean your room and clean your backpack and clean your locker. And that is the smallest possible fraction of what executive functioning is. My personal favorite definition of executive functioning is Dr. Russell Barkley's definition. And Dr. Russell Barkley is the worldwide leader on ADHD and executive functioning. Nobody has done more research and published more books and done more for the field than he has. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested in executive functioning, definitely check out Dr. Russell Barkley and his great books and research and type his name into YouTube and podcasts and things like that. So he defines executive functioning as when we take an action to ourselves. We stop responding to the outside world and external stimuli like screens, which is why executive dysfunction kids are highly prone to screen addictions, which I'm sure we can get into later. But we stop responding to the external world. We look within. We take an action to ourselves to stop ourselves from what we would have done on impulse. And instead, we aim our behavior towards the future. And we allow ourselves to self-regulate and self-motivate towards new, challenging, boring, non-stimulating activities now so that it benefits us later. So that's the executive functioning system, is when we as humans become future-oriented beings. When we think about the future, we visualize the future, we feel the future, and we change what we're doing now to make that future better.
Wow.
There you go.
I'm speechless, and I'm not often speechless, but that is an incredible definition. And I did not know that being future focused had anything to do with executive functioning skills. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course, yeah. And if you think about it, most people think about organization when it comes to time management. And what's the whole reason of organizing something? So it benefits you later. Like, I'm going to clean my backpack out now so that when I get to my next class later, I'll be able to find what I need. Why should I clean my room? So that when I go to bed later, everything is nice. Or when I wake up, everything is clear and things are nice. So the whole reason to manage our time and to organize our time is to benefit our future selves.
Awesome. Now, my understanding is that executive functioning skills are not fully developed until age 25. Is that an accurate thing?
It's definitely accurate.
Okay.
So it's between 25 and 30 years old, more towards 30. So the home of executive functioning is the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain right behind your forehead. So the front part of the brain. And over the first 30 years of life, the brain develops and strengthens from back to front. So the front of the brain is the last to develop, and it takes a lot of relationships and a lot of experiences, trying new things, doing new things, failing, being uncomfortable, being bored, being exposed to different people and different places and different experiences. That's what builds the brain. So it's those kids that wake up in the morning, go to school, come home, stay home, play Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, sit on their phone, sit on TikTok. Those are the kids that are really going to struggle with their executive functioning development because every day looks the same.
Interesting. So I thought that was really interesting because men, or for boys, the car insurance is high until they're 25.
There you go.
So I was like, oh, is there a correlation with that?
Probably.
And so as a society, we expect our children to be able to do all these executive functioning activities as early as age 8, maybe, right? Maybe even younger nowadays. I don't know. I don't have young kids anymore. What do you say to that?
I would say that's in some ways, I think there is a valid point that in today's world, kindergarten and first grade today look a lot more like, third, fourth, fifth grade when you and I were kids. So kindergarten and first grade became a lot more academic and rigorous over the past 5-10 years, which has been terrible because those kids need to play, and not be tested. And that's what's creating a lot of school anxiety and school refusal and things like that. But I think you can also make the argument that we're also over accommodating a lot of kids. And a lot of kids are being given really extensive 504s and really extensive IEPs that are lasting till graduation day and never being faded away. And they're not ready for college because there's not a college out there that can provide what a public school can provide with an IEP or a 504. So I think you can make the argument both ways that we're setting expectations too high, but I think you can make a stronger argument that for kids 18 and below, we're actually setting the bar a little low, and accommodating them too much, giving them too much extra time to submit tests. There's too many schools now that are getting rid of grading systems. There's too many schools out there that are getting rid of detentions. There's too many schools out there that are getting rid of zeros and refusing to fail kids if they don't do their work or don't pass any tests. So it's a lot of like participation trophies out there. So things like that, because they don't want to deal with the parents and deal with lawyers and things like that. But I think there's an argument that you can make that we're setting the bar too low, and then once they age out of 12th grade, they cannot succeed at college, they can't get a job, and they're kind of screwed.
Okay. I that's interesting that it like both sides of the coin, it's really affecting. So what do we do?
So what we have to do is we have to bring executive functioning principles into school, period. So teachers, psychologists, pretty much everybody who works directly with kids in a school got little to no executive functioning training on the way to get their master's degree or whatever it is to work with kids. I can tell you right now, I got my master's in speech and language pathology in 2015, and we talked about executive functioning for maybe a day, 2 days. I did all of my executive functioning training after I left academia. So we have to bring executive functioning principles into school. We have to bring play back to the younger grades. It needs to be more play-based and project-based and experiment-based. So kindergartners should not be doing, all these extensive math and reading and writing that they're doing all over the place. So we have to bring back play. We have to bring back project-based learning. We have to bring back community partnerships with schools and kids doing internships and externships out in the community. We have to get rid of all the crazy standardized testing. We have to get rid of this ridiculous lecture listen model of American education. We have to do something about homework because it's just becoming a fight for 3 hours every day after school with the parents. And the number one thing is we have to get all of this technology out of school. So kindergartners getting iPads, kids getting Chromebooks, MacBooks, and all of school revolving around a laptop has completely ruined education.
Okay, so that's a long list of changes.
Oh, yeah. It's a mess. It's a mess.
Made. And realistically, we don't have control over 96% of what you said as parents, right? So what can parents do to help their children develop their executive functioning skills?
Excellent question. So the number one thing that parents have to do and have to think about is the best way to strengthen executive functioning is through varied experiences. So kids' days have to look different. And the only way to do that is to significantly decrease, or even in severe cases, fully eliminate screen time in the home. So if your child has an ADHD diagnosis and executive dysfunction diagnosis, chances are you're going to have a screen-free house. Chances are you're going to have a video game-free house. If not, your house is basically a casino with a gambling addict living in it. So if screens and video games are available to your ADHD child, they are going to pick that 100 times out of 100 instead of doing other things. So you need to be very, very careful about screens, video games, smartphones. There's a new book out now called The Anxious Generation that every ADHD parent needs to read by Jonathan Haidt, talking about the dangers of screen time and what it's done to young brains and play and executive functioning. So that's a great book to read. And you have to, sign your kids up for multiple different things. You have to make sports after school, clubs after school, Boy Scouts, karate, all whatever it is. You have to get your kid involved in different things out of the house as much as possible.
Now, I raised 4 children, and I raised them when screens were not what they are today. And we didn't have TV on during Monday through Thursday or Sunday through Thursday, something like that. But I'm thinking I couldn't have financially afforded to have all my kids in multiple activities throughout the week. So, maybe just getting kids to go out to the park or the playground could be things that don't break the bank financially for people, or for lower income people who, they can't even afford one activity. But playgrounds and parks are still around. And
100%.
And basketball hoops are probably much easier to utilize these days than they were when you and I were kids.
Correct.
You would wait in line to use the basketball court back in the day when I was a kid.
No lines today.
So that's really helpful to know that, though, that really as parents, they need to put their foot down and go against the grain of society.
Yes.
I was recently talking to a teacher, and he said that he can't get the kids to put down their phones during school.
There you go.
Blew my mind, because when my kids were still in school, they weren't allowed to have their phones out.
Yep.
Now, that's not at all a thing. They can't get the kids to put them down.
Correct. Yeah. Well, when your kids were younger, it was probably a phone. Now it's a computer. So, let's be honest, we call it a phone, but it's a supercomputer in your pocket that you take everywhere. And the cell phones of today are stronger than the laptops we had in college. So
I didn't even have a laptop in college.
Yeah, there you go. So there you have
an electronic typewriter, and I was was fancy.
All right, there you go. But that's exactly it. Screens, we're giving kids screens before their brains are ready for it. And it's just giving them constant stimulation. And one of the biggest things that screens do to kids is it eliminates boredom. So that's the problem. Boredom is incredibly healthy to the young brain, because when you are bored, you think about the past and learn from the past. You think about the future and visualize the future. You talk to your brain, which is the foundation of all executive functioning. Executive functioning is nonverbal and verbal working memory, which is visual imagery and self-talk. So executive functioning really is a fancy term for your imagination. It's your ability to use your imagination. And we use our imaginations when we're bored and we're trying to entertain ourselves. But kids today are not bored. They're getting constant dopamine drips all throughout the day by touchscreens and video game controllers. And you expect your kid to do homework after playing games, after being on their phone. You expect them to want to go do social activities. You expect them to want to sit at the dinner table and talk about their day and answer questions about school after being on their phone and playing games. We're constantly asking these kids to go from most stimulating to least stimulating, and it's causing all these fights. When you're a parent, you have to be very cognizant of the screen time. You have to keep smartphones away until upper high school, no smartphones until upper high school. And if your child has ADHD, you need to make sure they do not have access to an Xbox, a PlayStation, a Switch, a gaming computer, a smartphone. You have to be very, very careful about the screens that they're exposed to, because it will be an experience killer and a boredom killer and a skill builder killer.
Yeah, my daughter has a 3-month-old, and they plan on having not giving her any tablet or anything.
Oh, no. But you cannot give a baby a tablet.
Well, not as a baby, but as a little kid, because these days parents give the babies a tablet or a phone at the restaurants, right? So we've talked about that. But what I was getting at is my daughter says that when they are watching TV, this 3-month-old turns around and is glued to the TV. At 3 months old, which they already intended to not introduce her to any of these things. but at 3 months old, she'd rather watch TV.
Of course.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
why wouldn't she? The what's on TV is, HD TV now is so bright and stimulating and captivating. Going back to what you said earlier about the whole restaurant thing, like honestly, like I get it. I get the whole restaurant thing. Like I'm pretty much the anti-screen guy because I just go off of the research and I don't sugarcoat it. But the whole thing of parents giving kids a cell phone or a tablet at a restaurant so they can sit down and have a nice, quiet, peaceful meal, I get it. I've never seen that and judged those people. The only recommendation I make is don't give it to them right away. Sit with them, engage with them, let them color, let them play games, and only give it to them once they start getting rambunctious and grabbing the salt and pepper and making a mess and, not allowing you to do that. But hey, if you go out to dinner and you want to have a nice peaceful dinner with your partner, your spouse, and your kid is there, give them a phone guilt-free. That's just there at the restaurant. What we're talking about is on a day-to-day basis within the walls of the home. If you have a screen-filled house and your child has open access to screens and open access to games, it's going to be very hard to get them to do anything that is not instantly stimulating. I'm talking about brushing teeth. I'm talking about showering. I'm talking about homework, going outside, playing, meeting new people, signing up for sports, pretty much all things that are actual real-world skills that they're going to need in life. They're not going to want to do it because they're going to do the screens instead.
Well, since most kids are in front of the screens, it just makes me wonder what we're looking at in 20 years.
It's going to be a mess. And that's what the Anxious Generation book talks about, is how difficult it is. And colleges are already seeing it in terms of decreasing college applications. So less kids are applying to go to college. More people are applying for unemployment. Failure to launch is greatly increasing. So kids are turning 18, getting a high school diploma, and going right to their parents' basement where they are completely unemployable and not going to go to college. So we're already seeing this avalanche of issues coming.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel like is the percentage of neurodiverse individuals with executive functioning challenges?
Probably close to 100%.
Really?
Executive functioning is the foundation of all things, of all skills, of all of these things. If you have ADHD, you have executive functioning challenges, because ADHD is executive functioning developmental disorder. So there's no, my son has ADHD and I think he has executive functioning problems. They are one and the same. ADHD is a disorder of executive functioning. If you have autism, you have some executive functioning challenges. Dyslexia, executive functioning challenges. Just to kind of run through this, I mentioned earlier that executive functioning is taking an action to the self, but let's very quickly kind of run through what the true executive functioning skills are. In the past, executive functioning was seen as external school-based skills, but now we know they are internal, crucial life skills that are the greatest predictor of success that we have. So number one is self-awareness, so the ability to be aware. So when parents first call me to sign their kids up for executive functioning coaching, the first thing they always say to me is, there's no way my son is going to agree to do this. He's going to hate it and he's not going to want to do it. And how am I going to get him to join the session with you? What am I going to do? And I have to remind them, it's a disorder of self-awareness. They don't think they have a problem. They think that you're just an annoying mom and you're on his back all the time. They don't think they need it. So it's going to be my job to provide him a fresh, unique, engaging experience to get him motivated. So it's my responsibility, not the parents. So self-awareness is the ability to be aware of one's strengths and needs, likes and dislikes, and to perceive your environment and perceive your impact on others. So self-awareness is a foundational skill that people start to see as babies. Little babies will start to realize, hey, when I cry, people come and help me. I get milk. If I smile at mommy, mommy smiles back. So they start to realize they have an impact on their environment. Number two is self-regulation. So the ability to regulate your emotions, your language, your body, your behavior in various environments towards various stimuli. So individuals with ADHD and executive functioning challenges may have a very, very short fuse, especially if they're screen addicted. There'll be an even shorter fuse. But anger and frustration and yelling and arguing and emotional manipulation and noise and complaining all the time will be a big part of their self-regulation issues. And this down the line leads to anxiety, negative self-talk, and all that kind of stuff. Number three, self-motivation towards non-preferred tasks. So basically the ability to motivate oneself towards anything that's not screen-based. So to intrinsic motivation towards non-screen-based tasks. And then number four is self-evaluation. the ability to learn from past experiences, apply it to the present, and not repeat mistakes over and over and over again. So we're talking about these internal executive function skills that need to be strengthened between 0 and 18. As they get older, they can still be strengthened. It's the most malleable plastic part of the brain. It just gets harder, after 18.
So how do you help students? You said it's your job, which I thought was very interesting. And I'm sure parents love to hear that it's not their responsibility to excite their child to participate. So what do you do to help them get excited about it?
Of course. Yeah. So basically what we do is we follow the true American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC recommendations for ADHD and executive dysfunction, which is number one, internal skill building, which is what we do. Working with them to strengthen nonverbal and verbal working memory so they have an internal system of checks and balances so they can better self-regulate and self-motivate. And we also, the number one recommendation for ADHD and executive functioning challenges is parent coaching and parent training. The parents have to be involved, and you have to coach the parents on how to best create structure in the home, to increase accountability, to get them into varied experiences, how to use specific language with them, how to use less language with them, because parents tend to talk too much at their kids and prompt their kids too much, which creates more dysregulation. Language makes dysregulation worse. So lots of parent training, and we work with the child because that helps us to individualize the parent coaching because we have a better view of who this child is. So basically what we do to keep the kids motivated is we provide them with a fresh, unique, engaging experience. It's all tailored towards a unique individual. It's not like virtual school, which was lectures about math, science, social studies. This is all one-on-one tailored towards the child. And what we do is we make it a quality of life focus. You gaining these skills is going to help you gain the independence you want. There's not a single child out there, single teenager, young adult out there that doesn't want some sort of independence. That's a natural human-based need to be independent, to be successful, to accomplish these things. And parents may be hearing that and saying, my son doesn't want to be successful. He doesn't want to be independent. He doesn't do anything for it. It's part of being a human is wanting to be able to do things on your own. Like everybody wants to be the boss, the supervisor, the captain, whatever. Everybody naturally wants those things, but having a quality of life focus, gaining these skills, trying new things, doing these things, and making it different than the therapies that don't work, like cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, DBT, counseling. Those things aren't going to strengthen executive functions. So showing them that they're having real world progress, they're gaining real skills, gets them motivated to the session and makes them want more.
And how long does your program usually last?
That's a very common question, and there is no average. Every single kid is different. So that's a very common question that parents tend to ask, especially once you start talking about pricing. Well, parents will be like, what's the average number of sessions until you see progress? When you really sit and think about it, you can start to see why that is an impossible question to answer. So ADHD and executive function are both on a spectrum. Every single child is different. Some are mild, some are moderate, some are severe. And every single kid is different. Every single child has their own unique set of goals and programming, and some stay in the program and just upgrade their goals. But it's always our goal as the provider to make it as short of a process as possible. So we start with weekly sessions. As we see progress, fade to bi-weekly, once a month. And the plan is to always give the parents the tools, give them the education, give them the parent coaching so that we are no longer needed as the specialists and the parents now know what to do on their own in the natural environment.
Gotcha. And you said provider. So to me, provider is a medical term. Does insurance cover your services?
No, it does not. So coaching is not therapy. It's not counseling. It's not a medical thing. Maybe I shouldn't have said provider. It's really the coaches. It's executive functioning coaches and parent training. And insurances are not going to cover coaching and parent training.
Right. Like insurance doesn't cover my tutoring either.
Correct.
But I just wondered. And so going back when you were talking about all people with neurodiversities are going to have executive functioning challenges. So is that why my desk is always a mess? And as much as I try, I cannot keep it tidy?
I suppose. But that's kind of that old school view of executive functioning of my room is messy. My backpack's messy. I have you know what I mean? It's really just more of, you certainly could clean it, but are you motivated to do so? If you're not like, it gets messy from all the work you do throughout the day. So once 5 o'clock hits, it's all messy. But do you, once 5:15 hits, can you motivate yourself and regulate yourself to clean it up for the next day? That's really what it is.
Ah, well, I've got this pile. I want to show it to you. But then I don't. But it's a pile that like just the stack just keeps getting bigger. And yeah, I'm terrified to even get started on it. But I'm sure there's some really important papers at the bottom of it.
Yeah. I have a pretty similar issue. I have ADHD myself, and I have a lot of I'm in my basement right now. I also have a 3-year-old daughter, so she tends to trash the place the day after the cleaners come. But yeah, I'm pretty messy myself.
And so you said you have ADHD. Is that how you got started in this profession?
Kind of. In some ways, I started as a speech and language pathologist. I ended up working with several doctors and neuropsychs and, different nonprofits. And I kind of just naturally found myself. I was diagnosed as an adult, not as a child, but obviously it made a lot of things from my childhood make sense. But it all sort of just worked that way. It all kind of just worked naturally. I always wanted to be a teacher or a therapist or something in education. That was something I always wanted to be since I was a kid. So I found myself into speech pathology, doing more one-on-one work as opposed to classroom work. And then, the people that I was surrounding myself by, kind of just really working and networking and meeting people in the field, I naturally found myself captivated by executive function. So I kind of followed that route.
And do you do it virtually or just in your area where you live?
Virtually. Yep. Virtually all across the country and internationally. So we work with students all over the world.
And you say we, so do you have other people who are doing the coaching as well?
Yep. We have several GrowNOW coaches that have been trained by me and work through GrowNOW. Yes.
Awesome. And so how can people reach out to you if they are interested in learning more about your services?
Sure. So my website is GrowNOWADHD.com. You can go right on there and learn about our services and fill out a very quick form, which will then, send you a link to set up a free 10-minute call directly with me. People call me and they expect to talk to like a secretary, but it's me and it's me who will answer the phone. So GrowNOWADHD.com is my website. And my Instagram is at GrowNOWADHD. So follow me on Instagram, shoot me a message on there if you heard the podcast and let me know if you enjoyed it or if you have any questions. That's a great place to send me a message or, comment on one of the videos. And you can go to my website and send me a message directly.
Awesome. And do you have any final tips or things that you want to share with our audience?
I would just like to further stress that importance of experiences and relationships. This is in this screen-based world, there's probably never been a harder time to be a parent. And there's probably never been a harder time to be a teacher either, with everything going on with schools. But it is your responsibility as a parent to learn about authoritative parenting. Authoritative parenting is warm, nurturing, 50-50, democratic, all of those things. It's not authoritarian parenting, it's authoritative parenting. Learn about authoritative parenting and know that you are the parent. If you are paying your child's phone bill, if you're buying the Xbox, you're buying the PlayStation, you're buying the Switch, all of those things belong to you. You have the right to remove them from the house, and you have the right to do that permanently. You have to get your kids out and about experiencing the world, because if they're living their entire childhood and adolescence in the virtual world, they are not going to be ready for the real world.
Very, very good point. Thank you, Mike, so much for taking the time to share with us your expertise about executive functioning skills. I appreciate you coming here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I was so happy when you reached out, and it's a privilege to be a guest here on your excellent podcast. And thank you for all you do and the work that you do and the services you provide. So thank you so much.